Last week, I talked about meekness and weakness and touched on a common misconception about strength. The one about asking for help and the myth surrounding how that makes you weak. That's what we will examine and explore in today's talk. You'll learn about the advantages and disadvantages of asking for help, why we often stop ourselves from asking for help, and also about real-life examples of how doing the opposite is actually better for you. Keep listening to learn more. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Philosophy Podcast, a bite-sized weekly podcast focused on empowering you to think better and upgrade your life. So let's talk about strength and how it relates to asking for help. There is a common misconception about strength and how it is connected with asking for help. There is a very confusing relationship there. There is this widely held belief that asking for help makes you weak. It's a very widespread belief. But the fact is, it could not be further from the truth. That is a myth, and here is the reality. Being strong isn't about being infallible. No matter how much you try, that's just not a really plausible option. Trust me on this, I've tried. I grew up with that mental model, the belief that asking for help is a sign of weakness, and found out the hard way that not asking for help just makes life harder. There is actually nothing weak about asking for help. Everyone needs help, and asking for help is actually a sign of strength. It takes a strong person to ask for help when they need it. Being strong does not mean that you cannot ask for help. But let's weigh up the pros and cons of asking for help to shed more light on this. There are lots of advantages to asking for help, and here are some of the big ones. Firstly, it enables you to do things that you don't know how to do. No one can know everything after all. The second big one is that it enables you to achieve things that you might not have been able to achieve on your own. No one can do everything after all. A third big one is that it expands your ability to do things, since having even an extra pair of helping hands can right away double your capacity. A fourth big one is that it can help improve your results, since two heads are often better than one. And the fifth big one is that it can even make things less stressful. It can make things less stressful, since having help can enable you to shoulder the burden with someone else. You can share the burden with others rather than having to shoulder it all alone. There are lots more advantages to asking for help, but those are some of the big ones. Now, for the sake of argument, let's look into the disadvantages of asking for help. This was a tough one. I've been racking my brain, and here are the two I could think of. Number one, that people might think you are weak. Or number two, that people might say no. Let's examine the first one first. We get put off by the idea of asking for help mainly because we don't want others to think that we need help. That's pretty much the main reason why most people don't ask for help. This then goes down to a deep-rooted need to seem strong. So it's ultimately about perception and how others perceive you. But here's the thing. True strength is not about how others perceive you. Just because people might think Gandhi was weak did not make him weak, or strong for that matter. That's just an example, but you get the point. Others' perception can boost you, but ultimately it plays a very, very small role in how strong or weak you really are. True strength comes from within. If it's relying on external sources for validation, then that's not true strength. Here is another important fact to consider. The fact that most of the time people actually like being asked for help. Just think back to the last time a friend or colleague asked you for help. What was your initial reaction? Did you right away think, wow, this person is really weak? Or was your initial reaction one of happiness and maybe a bit of pride even? Pretty much always, you'll feel good about being asked for help. We like being asked for help. Whether you can help or not is a different story, but being asked for help generally feels good. And most people want to help. In the same way, you'll want to help if and when a friend or colleague asks you for help. We even like helping strangers, people we don't know anything about. So this idea that people will think less of you is nearly always one that is very far from the truth. It's not a true thing. This fact also sheds light on the other potential disadvantage. The other thing that often puts people off, and it's that people might refuse. As you know by now, people generally want to help. Now, of course, there might be times when someone might say no. Can happen. It's normal. There can be 100 different reasons for that. Maybe they're really inundated by things in their own life. Maybe they don't really know how to do what you want help with. Maybe they're fearful of looking incapable. Maybe they're stressed or upset about something. We don't really know why someone might say no. But it doesn't really matter. It's totally okay if someone does say no. In fact, it's better if someone tells you up front that they cannot help you, rather than failing to show up when you need them. Getting a no is not the end of the world. If someone refuses to help, you can simply go and find someone else. As you can see, neither of the potential disadvantages really are disadvantages. They're just constructs in our minds. All they are potential obstacles that we create in our minds, and more often than not, they're not even true. And even in the rare occasions that they really are the reality, it still doesn't matter. Once you really grasp that truth, you'll realize that asking for help absolutely does not make you weak. It never has been a sign of weakness, and it never will be. Anytime you feel like asking for help makes you weak, that's just some antiquated, misleading idea stuck in your head and your ego trying to protect you. So as you can see, that line of reasoning that asking for help is a sign of weakness really doesn't hold up. Because in reality, very few people genuinely will consider you weak if you do ask for help. And even in the rare occasion that someone does think that, it really doesn't matter, because your strength is not reliant on what others think of you. If it is, then you need to do some serious work on yourself. For the purpose of this talk, just remember that true strength comes from inside you and not from external sources. This is not a new idea, by the way. The best of the best, the people who make things happen, have made things happen, know this truth. History is full of examples of how the best, strongest, and most successful people in the world have used help from others. Bill Gates didn't do it alone. Jeff Bezos didn't do it alone. Steve Jobs didn't do it alone. Warren Buffett didn't do it alone. Elon Musk didn't do it alone. I can cite you hundreds of examples like that, thousands even. The list is a never-ending one. Look, the truth is, whichever luminary or even the legendary historical figures you want to examine, you will see that pretty much each and every one of them had help. Even Sherlock Holmes had Watson, Batman had Robin, and Superman had the Justice League. Fictional characters they might be, but they make the point of how even the most incredible and strong and powerful characters need and ask for help. Even superheroes need help sometimes. If you really examine the lives of the most successful people, you'll realize that the importance of and the necessity of asking for help, was like a secret that the best of the best knew. An open secret that they knew and utilized to their benefit, but one which most people were and still are unaware of and even avoid. Not a single one of them, be it fictional superheroes or real-life legends, did it all alone. And the bigger and more monumental the achievement, the more help usually they will have had. It's not that they are not capable. They absolutely are. They're usually more capable than most people. So it's not that they're not capable, but rather that they just aren't bound by harmful myths that hold them back. They don't buy into this misconception about asking for help making them weak. And that's the mental model I want you to adopt, especially if you have been operating on the basis of this inaccurate belief or misconception. Most people are sold on this lie that not asking for help makes them stronger, when in reality it does the complete opposite. Just think about it for a minute. If one person really could do everything, and if getting help indeed was a sign of weakness, every ship would be manned by just the captain alone. Every plane would be flown by just a single pilot. And every construction site would just have one worker. But you never see that happen. You never see just one person running a ship or a plane or a construction project because one person cannot do everything. It just is not physically possible. Now, you might debate that you don't need to ask for help since the things in your life aren't as big. But even for smaller personal things, it is a good idea to ask for help, especially when you need it. You already know why this is beneficial for you. But let's have a quick recap of the benefits of asking for help to remind you of why asking for help and getting help, even in your personal life, is a good idea. So to recap, here are the 5 big benefits. The first big benefit of asking for help is that having the help makes it possible for you to do things that you don't know how to do. Yes, you can potentially teach yourself, but often getting help is the better option. The second big benefit is that it enables you to achieve things that you might not have been able to achieve on your own. There's a reason why even world-class athletes like Usain Bolt have coaches and trainers and a whole team of people. The third big benefit is that it expands your ability to do things. Even if you consider just the sheer manpower benefit, even in the simplest of terms, it is still better for you to have help, since having even an extra pair of helping hands can right away double your ability of doing things. If you have ever moved houses, you know how true this is and how having help can really make the whole process better. The fourth big benefit of asking for help is that it can help improve your results. 2 heads usually are better than one after all. The fifth big benefit of asking for help is that it can make things less stressful. When you have to do everything on your own, you are not just shouldering the responsibilities, you are also taking on all the stresses that might come with a certain thing. But contrast that to a scenario where you have help. In that scenario, you are enabled to share the burden with others rather than having to shoulder it all alone. Those are some pretty big benefits of asking for help. But then there is another huge benefit, one I didn't really touch on earlier, and it's that asking for help is pretty much the only way you can ever get help. Simple, right? As the saying goes, if you don't ask, you don't get. So asking for help is really good for you. But there is a caveat to all of this, and a side note, if you will. And it's that, as good as asking for help and getting help is, it should never be unilateral. What do I mean by this? Here is what I mean. You should always strive to give more than you take. Otherwise, it falls into the realm of selfishness, and that is never a good path. But that's pretty obvious, and asking for help should never become a one-sided ask marathon. Always aim to add more value than you receive. That should be very fundamental operating model for you. If you're only interested in taking and don't want to give back, then this podcast isn't for you. Let me be honest with you. This podcast is all about thinking better, so I genuinely hope that you won't fall into that narrow-minded trap of being selfish. Always think about how you can add value. It's not just about taking, it's also about adding value. So, as for the topic of asking for help, it should be abundantly clear by now that asking for help is always better than not asking for help. The only thing not asking for help does is feed your pride or ego. So that's really the only benefit you get out of it. But that is not a tangible benefit. That actually adds no real value to your life. The sooner you realize that not asking for help only harms you and holds you back, the sooner you can escape the clutches of this negative, antiquated, and archaic misconception. The sooner you start asking for help, the sooner you will start seeing positive results in your life. Asking for and getting the help you need certainly isn't a cure-all and won't solve everything in your life. But what it absolutely will do is make your life easier, often significantly. Here is the bottom line. Contrary to popular belief, asking for help does not make you weak. It does quite the opposite, in fact. Asking for and getting help makes you stronger, and that's the reality, rather than the assumed hypothetical scenarios that justify not asking for help. Asking for help benefits you. When you ask for help, it actually helps you, whereas not asking for help can keep you stuck and even harm you. Asking for help is good for you, while not asking for help can be bad for you. It really is as simple as that. You know this already, by the way. If you need confirmation, just go and look at anyone that you consider successful. It can even be someone in your own life. Just look at anyone who has done anything significant or noteworthy or great, and you will see someone who is unafraid to ask for help. In that sense, asking for help is a key contributor to success and achieving things, especially great things. So ask for help as and when you need it. Do it because it's the smart thing to do, and because this way you get the help you need and can make the progress that otherwise you would have really struggled to make. Also do it because there is only so much you can do it all by yourself. But whatever you do, don't let archaic notions and misconceptions like the belief that asking for help makes you weak hold you back. Don't let them hold you back, because it doesn't. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. If anything, asking for help makes you strong. Don't shy away from asking for help.